Hello, I'm Eric Walenza, founder of IoT One, and this is the Industrial IoT Spotlight. Every episode, I interview one expert about a project that is impacting businesses today. Visit us at iot1.com to learn more, or email me to start a discussion. Welcome back to the Industrial IoT Spotlight. I'm joined today by Carsten Metelmann, VP of International Sales for APAC and the former Soviet Union for EPLAN. EPLAN is a mid-sized German company of about 850 people. They're part of the Friedman Lohm Group, which is Germany's largest privately held conglomerate in the electrical field. If we look at how the company's evolved in the past, let's say 7 years since you've joined, or how the market more generally has evolved, we've seen increasing digitalization in factories and also in product portfolios. Has this impacted how you're addressing the market, or are the fundamental needs that you're addressing, are they relatively unchanged? It's just maybe a larger proportion of companies that are now, seeing the need and investing in this type of CAD solution?
Very good point. There's several answers to that. It all depends whether you look at it from the macro point of view or from a micro point of view. So if you look at it from a user level, if we start with the user level, electrical engineering is a very conservative industry. We talk about panel design here, we talk about schematics, and it's been a traditional industry that when EPLAN was established about 30 years ago, we were the first electrical engineering software to run on a PC. And our mission was more or less to replace the draftsman, or to enable the draftsman to become more efficient in producing electrical design by using a computer. So at that time, everything was done in 2D, two-dimensional. And if you look at it from a user point of view, many users will say, okay, what we did 20 years ago, we're practically doing the same today, which is partly true. And here we have a shift that is currently ongoing, is from 2D design to 3D design. So that's a shift that's supported by more powerful computers, higher network speed, etc. Now, if you look at it from a more macro point of view, I think the changes are even bigger. If you look at the past 10 years, we look at globalization. Globalization has been the main driver of our business, because the way we organize electrical engineering is that we promote automation and optimization through standardization. And that makes a lot of sense when value chains are broken up and people don't sit all together in one room, but work on the same project with distributed locations. And this is what globalization is doing. You have, let's say, you can have a design team in Japan, you have a factory then in China, they have an end user, say, in Australia. So you have to cover 3 locations, right? And this kind of needs have increased dramatically during the last 10 years. It's actually one reason why EPLAN and I work so well together, is that EPLAN is, as a German software, has been traveling along with this megatrend globalization, and originally had a very strong customer base in Central Europe, meaning in German parlance, Central Europe means Germany, Switzerland, Austria. So if you look at the shift that's occurred, if you just look at how China has grown bigger and how much in that electrical area, we have about 50% of global capacity and about 40% of global added value is happening in China. So China has become very, very important, but so has India, and so have other places in the area. So this has really changed. And this change is, fortunately, it's continuing. I say fortunately is because it's really helping us in our business. It's driving our business. This is especially crucial in Japan. In Japan, electrical engineering is quite backward, and it's highly, highly customized with local, almost handmade solutions that are so specialized, tailor-made for the needs of Japanese customers, that what they say about lots of developments in Japan, they talk about Galapagos syndrome. It's actually true for this segment of the market. And it's only the pressure of globalization, the pressure of globalized markets that now forces Japanese conglomerates to open up and to be more receptive to ideas of standardization. our story actually in Japan, we established a company in Japan a couple of years ago, and we're very successful now opening up the market there. The story in Japan is actually not only focused in Japan, it's focused on what we can achieve together with our Japanese clients in a globalized environment. And for Japan, that means very often Thailand, means Vietnam, means Japan, means Europe and the US, and in some cases also India. So this is actually the story that opens doors in Japan, for instance, and that's a child of globalization. So I think the most significant trend for the last 10 years has been globalization.
Interesting. And what, if we can do a little bit of benchmarking here, what does it look like in, let's say, maybe we choose 4 countries. We benchmark against Germany, and then we look at China, Japan, and India. How would you compare those countries in terms of adoption of CAD technology for electronic systems?
I would say that Germany is the most mature market because German companies have grown used to outsource a lot of design to specialized departments and to specialized service providers. And they're very comfortable with purchasing software and integrating software from various vendors. And they understand that a common standard is needed in order for that setup to work smoothly. In Germany, this acceptance is being driven by basically the whole ecosystem, including large companies, small, medium enterprises, and even individual specialists, individual contributors.
Completely makes sense that Germany would be a leading adopter here. It fits in extremely well with the competencies and focus of German companies. Where would you say adoption is? Are we talking about 50%, 70%, 90%? Is this something where basically in Germany companies feel like we have to use some sort of CAD for electronic design to compete? Or is it something that companies look at as a competitive advantage for maybe companies that want to do higher quality, more complex design?
According to the industry figures, in Germany, EPLAN has a market share of 66%. So, and there we still have a few competitors, but I'd say that to answer your question, I'd say 95 to 98% German market is developed. For electrical engineering, they would insist on state-of-the-art tools. And you can see that we have a global partnership with Autodesk of the US because Autodesk is very good in modeling, 3D modeling, in mechanical engineering. However, for electrical design, Autodesk is not accepted in that Central European region. And this is why Autodesk's market share in that particular area is much, much lower than elsewhere in the world. And this is because this particular market requires state-of-the-art, high-quality tools for electrical engineering. It's just used to that. And that impacts on the productivity of the companies, of course. So I'd say 98%. If I look at other markets, it's the degree of acceptance for such tools in Japan, I would say is about 70-75%. There's still a lot of chunk of manual work that is done, especially at small, medium-sized suppliers. But also, if you look at the way Japanese companies have insisted on customizing or even producing in-house software that is kind of primitive but deeply integrated into the manufacturing process of these customers. If you look at that, I would say that the whole acceptance issue is not whether it's electronic or not. It's whether it's something that was invented by us, meaning by the customers themselves and in-house, or whether we agree to basically buy a commercial software and then just slightly tweak it. So I'd say about 70%. And China is a very big and diverse market. And if you look at some areas, I just give you one example. In China, a lot of design work is done in design institutes. And design institutes, Chinese 设计院, you will know that. You have certain industries, like, for instance, the whole energy sector. The whole energy sector where design habits in all kinds of design, not only electrical, are very conservative and are dominated by big monopolies. Here, you have a low acceptance of electronic tools. And you have a lot of legacy design that will be manual and will only slowly be converted. It's not a question of money. The money is available. It's a question of the way how people work. And it's a question of competitive pressure, to be honest. But apart from that, if you look at manufacturing sector in China, I'd say the acceptance is about at 80%, 85%. It's definitely higher than in Japan. The Chinese manufacturing sector faces pressure to automate, to rely less on manual work and automate more, because I believe we can all see by now this practice that was promoted for several years to move factories inside China, for instance, from Shanghai to Sichuan, or from Shanghai to Henan, or from Shenzhen to Chongqing. And this won't solve the problem over a long time. So there's a big acceptance in the Chinese manufacturing scene for automated tools and highly integrated electronic tools. Now, India, I'd say the degree is about 50%. And the problem, or it's not the problem, the selling characteristic here of the Indian market is that across the board, from top to bottom, the Indian market is the most cost conscious, and Indian manufacturers promote themselves as being still the lowest cost producer. And so here we have a high barrier to investment in individual workplaces, in software, but also in human resources, in education. So I'd say this level of acceptance is low, and it will remain low as long as the value proposition of Indian manufacturers does not change, does not evolve. That's I would prefer to use the word evolve. And I haven't seen that evolution happening for the last couple of years, unfortunately.
Very interesting. And this trend of globalization, I would say we're not really seeing maybe a recession of it, but we're certainly seeing a slowing down. We're seeing some production move back to the US or to Europe as automation makes labor a smaller component of the cost structure. What are you seeing as, if we look out over the next 10 years, what do you see as the big driver of this industry, assuming that globalization is reaching somewhat of a maturity point, and it's going to remain with us, but it's not it's not necessarily going to be the driver of change across industries in the next decade?
Yeah, well, Eric, as you know, it's always very difficult to predict the future, and so I'm usually when we predict the future, we extrapolate what we see right now, what's happening right now. So instead of predicting the future, I refer to another mega trend that I see is already starting to shape the industrial environment and to shape the workplace, and will have a huge impact on our business model. And that's demographic change. The labor market is changing in Germany, or has changed in Germany and Japan, from a buyer's market to a seller's market. And very simply speaking, as the cohorts of young engineers that go into the market every year get smaller and smaller, but the business volume that is being designed in electrical engineering and in automation gets bigger. The basic challenge is how to achieve more with fewer people. And as our business, electrical engineering, electrical design, is a little technical, and as I said, we're close to manufacturing, so we're close to the factory floor. These are not necessarily very sexy, very attractive industries. So I personally believe they're very attractive, they're very important, but not everybody thinks that way. So we compete with talent, and we have to face the situation that talent may get rarer during the next couple of years. So that will have an impact. It will drive automation in Japan, because the Japanese, if I may use this kind of generalization, the Japanese do not want to import foreign labor to make up for domestic shortfall. So they will go for robotics and automation. It will drive automation in China. It is driving automation in Germany. It's this huge drive on moving know-how from the brains of human beings into the software, into the value chain, into the workflow itself. In India, hard to see. We have a huge number of young engineers growing up in India or nearing graduation in India. However, whether they will be equipped with modern tools, I don't know. I really cannot guess this. I don't even have a guesstimate. So demographic change is one big driver of our development. Another driver of the development is cloud business. And of course, here we are in industrial Internet of Things, with cloud business, industrial Internet of Things, Industry 4.0, smart manufacturing, all these concepts and buzzwords, slightly different, but they're all linked. They're all linked, and the linkage that I see is that technological developments in telecommunication and communications technology drive change in manufacturing industries. And that includes design, includes engineering, includes manufacturing. Just like demographic change changes everything, because it changes the way how people work and how the workplace is defined. So this revolution in telecommunications that's been ongoing for like 20, 25 years, and is now reaching the factory floor, is, in my perception, and in the perception of a lot of people I talk to, it's a foreign force that needs to be integrated and needs to be dealt with within the context of manufacturing. Okay? And that has a huge impact, and that includes cloud business and the way customers' needs are served in the first place. And it's a fascinating time because there's so much change, Eric. It's like we're all caught up in a storm. We're caught up on sea on a storm, and we have, like EPLAN is a ship, and we know our ship, we know the sea, and we know how to navigate, but it's still a storm. Fascinating time.
It's a great way to describe what's happening now as a foreign force. When I talk to a lot of technology vendors, also a lot of end users, and from the end user perspective, often it feels like it is somewhat of an invasion, right? It's a new set of technology that is, to an extent, wiping away, in some cases, some competitive advantage. Technologies that and systems that companies have invested heavily in are becoming less relevant, and other companies that maybe were not competitors are now becoming quite relevant in the market because they've just have a different set of technologies that are better suited to some of the needs of the future. So, great way to look at this. Thanks for joining the first part of our discussion with Carsten Metelmann and EPLAN. You can learn more about EPLAN at www.eplanusa.com. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of the Industrial IoT Spotlight. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at IoT1HQ and to check out our database of case studies on IoT1.com. We help to accelerate digital transformation by advising business leaders on how to integrate IoT technologies into their operations and products. We appreciate your thoughts, suggestions, and of course your reviews. And if you have an interesting project, we'd love to feature you on a future edition. You can write me at eric.walenza@iot1.com.